Hello, everyone. This is Faisa, and welcome you to another episode of AI Geo Navigators. And today's episode is one I'm especially excited about, not just because of the topic, but because of the remarkable guest joining us. So, if I introduce the guest with you, today we have a guest whose work has shaped climate finance, environmental safeguard, and community engagement across the globe. With over 20 years of experience and advanced degrees in sociology, environmental sustainability, climate change and sustainability, and environmental law, she has led in major donor-funded projects with World Bank and Asian Development Bank, and as well as UNDP. And she's currently lead the project of Green Punjab Credit Program at the Environment Protection and Climate Change Department. So let's welcome to the podcast, Ms. Rizwana Anjan. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Thank you very much. So I'm very much thankful to you for inviting me for this today's podcast and very interesting topic.
So it's such a pleasure to have you here, and you bring a rare combination of field experience and policy insights. And I know our audience is going to take away a lot from this conversation. For starting with, you have worked across sectors, across geographies, and through enormous shifts in global climate policy. So if I ask you, what is one defining moment in your 20 years of experience journey that shaped your philosophy in environmental sustainability and climate finance?
Basically, I am working with the climate and the sustainability sector since previous 20 plus years, and closely working for the climate finance sector since previous 8 years. And the turning point came around when today and a day I just received a call from some unknown number there, and there were multiple messages on my LinkedIn Messenger from some unknown person, and so then I start just responding those queries, and there was someone from the some international firm, recruiting firm, basically, who were searching someone for the due diligence of funding proposals. And when I further learned, came to know that basically there was a recruiting agency from who has to recruit some international consultant for the Green Climate Fund, and they need the expertise for due diligence of the funding proposals of Green Climate Fund and the worldwide proposal that they are receiving. They need some consultants for the due diligence of environment, social safeguard, and the climate finance. Climate finance aspects, basically, for the funding for proposals of GCF in the light of their social and environmental safeguards, in the light of their climate finance requisitions, and some other aspects. So it was very interesting for me. I didn't apply on anywhere. I didn't was the candidate of any such opportunity. And it was very interesting for me. At first, I just learned that, oh, it might be some spam or something like that. It may be some fake. But it was not. They asked me to share my CV and something like that. And they shared me that URs. And then I just was continuously responding to them. And then within 24 hours, they just send me a contractual agreement, copy of contractual agreement that you have been selected for. We have offered you the role of international due diligence consultant to for the role of due diligence of the funding proposals of this year. That was such an interesting and such an kind of happening that I was not expecting it at all. And it basically happened due to my profile, which is built on the LinkedIn. And then I attained that. And since that time, since 2020, it was that time of COVID days. So since that time, since like 2020, I am closely working with the Green Climate Fund as an international consultant for the due diligence of funding proposals of the Green Climate Fund. And up till now, I have presented my review of almost more than 50 funding proposals which GCF received, and I gave them my review and the comments, and I helped them out in finalizing the funding proposals. So that is very much interesting thing which I have came across in my throughout professional career. And it was basically directly, as you know, the Green Climate Fund is the main organization affiliated with the UNFCCC and working granting funds for the climate finance. It is the main core organization. So there is such a learning and a good opportunity for me that I'm working with the GCF since previous 5 years.
On this stage, up 20 years of experience, now still recruiting agencies are going to recruit you. So like it's great to hear. So like if now I talk about you have designed ESG framework for diverse sectors, even for something unconventional as the tobacco industries in Zimbabwe. So what do you think is the biggest misconception organizations have regarding ESG compliance?
Well, the main major misconception that I have learned from my work with the organization in developing and helping and assisting them in the development of their CSR ESG system. So it is about that most of the organization are going to think that it is some tool for their advertisement, that they are going to advertise that we are working for the sustainability, and it will be the source of more creating goodwill in the market, and it will be marketing tool. And basically, ESG is can be used as a marketing tool as well, but the main core of ESG development is not marketing. It is basically we will have to ensure the transparency and the accuracy and the more and more accountability phenomena we will have to ensure that. So although it could be used as a marketing tool, also as an advertising tool as well, but the core principle of development of ESG is not marketing. So that is the main major misconception which I realized while working with different organizations. Secondly, I also got realization that the main core administrative and the executive heads of the organization, they think that ESG is something beyond their role. They don't consider it as as part of their responsibility. They did never even ask to the ESG team or the environment and social or the governance team who are going to develop the reports or who are monitoring the reports or who are developing such GRI based tools. They never did even bother to know about it or take it as per their governance tool. And that's why that is the main reason of not very successful development of the ESG systems or the GRI reports. So that is the major misconception which I feel that the governor, the executive positions, they should need to understand their role as well. It's not the role only of the 2 or 3 persons, a team of 2, 3, or the 5 different persons who are going to develop that thing. It is basically at the executive level, from top to bottom. Everyone should have their roles, and they must learn that what it is going on and how they have to participate in the overall scenario of sustainability. So that is the another misconception which I felt during working with the various organizations.
Okay, so now if I ask you, what is the biggest lesson like working on that project surprises you?
Well, I was working with the Zimbabwe leaf tobacco. That was a very interesting experience, multiple experiences which I learned. But the most important thing was when basically they have transformed their CSR into community-led various and systems, and they are basically utilizing that over the betterment of the community. And the first thing which I was very much important, which I would like to mention, was basically about the provision of providing the sanitary pads to the underprivileged girls of rural areas, of those farmers who are engaged with the tobacco cultivations and the overall system, the enterprises or something like that. So that was very much interesting for me to visit that area and to meet all those rural communities. The other thing for which the they are working is about they are also engaging the farmers to develop model farms, and they're also working with the they're very much closely working with the communities, and they prefer that after once they have cultivated the and harvested the tobacco crop, then they should move towards the other crops like maize. If we may talk about the maize is the crop which need less or no fertilizers. If you are going to crop it after the cultivation of tobacco, so that it was also a very good learning for me, that the overall the agriculture scenario of that, and to work with the communities, particularly the rural communities of Zimbabwe. So it was very interesting experience overall.
Yeah, it's very interesting to know. Myself, I'm very surprised to know these things. So, in your view, what unique environmental challenges do developing countries face that are often overlooked in, international conferences, international dialogues like COP, or the very high level dialogues?
Basically, I have realized that more or less the challenges and the risks are the issues are more or less similar in nature in all the developing world, in all the developing countries. Like, if I may, would like to tell that I have worked in the uh, Russian states, all the states of Russia. Like, I have worked with the as an international climate change expert with Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and the more or less five different. I have worked with the five Russian states on behalf of ASEAN Development Bank. So when I visited those countries and I worked with those experts and the basically government-owned departments and the government-owned ministries of those countries, the thing which I realized that their capacity issues are more or less same. Rather, you are working with the those South Asian states, or you are working with the Pakistan, or you are working with Bangladesh or India or some other regions of the world, that they more or less the capacity issues in the understanding of the government sector is the government sector who is going to implement the projects, development sector projects. The capacity issues are more or less same everywhere in the developing countries. The other thing which I have realized is about the lack of knowledge, understanding, and to integrate the particularly gender and social inclusion aspects in the development sector projects. That is the very much common practice that they overlook such kind of things. They don't give it due consideration to work for the gender and social inclusion. And what is the main concept of gender and social inclusion? They don't have the idea of it. Similarly, when I have worked with the infrastructure development project, like I have worked for water and sanitation areas, I have worked for the wastewater treatment plant, for the nature-based solutions as well. So when I work with all such kind of development sector projects, then I came to realize that when there are such kind of projects that at the planning and design phase, they just don't make the part of environment team, social safeguard team, gender and social inclusion expert, and the climate change expert. Basically, the core experts are missing at that time of planning and design of any development project. So that is the thing which I have realized is missing all over the developing world. So basically, the project planners are the designers at most of the time. Rather, they may be engineers, or they may be architects, or they may be, if you are working with the health sector, they may be health experts. So at that time, the core experts of environment, social, climate change are the gender experts. They are not the part of planning and design team. So when the project is designed, everything is planned, and then you are going to execute the project, then you get recalled, oh, environment and social experts or the climate change experts are also the part of it. Then you go for the hiring of those people, and when they came on board, then almost half of the project has got established. So their role at the planning and design phase is missing. They can't give the input and feedback which is necessary and which is important at the planning and design phase.
I guess, mom, you identify the very root cause of the, world issues. So now, as you mentioned, gender and social inclusion. So if I ask, how can development agencies ensure that there are not, just check boxes? You just have to check box items, but real drivers of change in climate projects.
Well, like if I may recall that what I have been doing in all that scenario, like if I may tell you about the example of when I was working with my latest visit was in Uzbekistan and then in the Kyrgyzstan. And I was working there as the international consultant to develop the climate change, climate mitigation plans for the cities of Uzbekistan and for the cities of Kyrgyzstan. So the main thing was that when I was going to deliver them the training on adaptation plan. So the missing thing was about firstly, there was no females over there. And most of the, particularly the government ministries and departments are male dominating. And when it comes the role of women, they are basically at such kind of roles. They are receptionists, they are cooks, they are driving, and something like that. At the part of governance and the decision-making positions, there are no females. Even if they are part of the governing bodies at the board of directors or something, they only one or two, not more than that. Then if there are 7 or 8 members, only one female would be there. And her vote or her power to decide anything is so limited that her voice is not heard at any forum. So that is the major thing which I have observed overall, that women voice is not heard properly.
Yeah, it's a very root cause issue. So now let's turn to something that will inspire next generation. Like you mentioned, gender issues, social inclusion issues, and the leadership roles of women is missing. And so, if a young woman professional came to you and asking how to build a meaningful career in climate and environmental policy, so what advice would you give her?
Well, I first and utmost thing that I always say is that behave like a professional. Don't behave like a woman. Don't behave like a girl. Prove yourself as a professional. It is the one and last rule only. It is the first key to be in field, to be a career woman. You should prove yourself as a professional. Always talk on the terms of a professional. So that is the very important thing which I must say, and I always say to all those females who has worked under my team, who have been working with me, who are my colleagues, or my co-workers, I always say one thing, that you should keep in your mind that you are a professional. Forget about it, you are a female. Unless and until you will be feeling like a female, oh, I can't do this, these are my limitations, I can't go there, I can't go to field, I am not made for field work, you can't be a successful climate change or environment expert. Be ready for everything and prove yourself as a professional. Face every challenge and just be rigid to your principles. Never compromise, never ever do compromise on your self-made principles. Self-made mean, like I must say that there are, when you are a professional woman, you are a career-oriented woman, then you must have to set the boundaries for yourself. You are the person who is setting the boundaries, and you should know that what are my boundaries. Never give time or never give that opportunity to anyone else to set in your boundaries or to cross your boundaries. Once you have limited that, you have just defined that principle for you, you will behave like a professional woman. So that is the key.
So in whole, I guess, be a man. So now it's time for a little fun for a rapid fire round. So I'll ask a short question, and you have to answer in one statement or two. So starting starting from one climate leader you admire.
Well, I must say, Shari Rahman.
Oh wow, she's great. She's a great climate leader. So a book or a paper that deeply influenced your climate work.
Well, there are many. Basically, book, I must say, it's not a book. Basically, it is, you may say, various documentaries. I don't find enough time to read the books or to just go into the some sort of proper movies or something like that. But I must inspired by the documentaries. And there are many. I didn't say one or, there are no titles of the document, most of the documentaries. So, but I get inspired from the documentaries, which are made for the sake of climate change, for awareness for how to conserve the climate crisis or something like that.
Okay, so next, as you already mentioned a lot of projects, but one most memorable field experience from any project.
Well, that was basically my project to work as an international climate change expert for Uzbekistan in Tashkent. That was such an amazing experience to work with the Uzbek community. It was a wonderful experience.
Okay, so now as a foreigner, what do you prefer, a coffee or a chai?
Uh, Depends upon the mood, but early morning I would prefer coffee, and it is mostly throughout the day. It is very important to have tea, but early morning is coffee.
Okay, so one myth about climate finance you wish people should stop believing.
That uh, climate finance is very complex.
Okay, so what do you prefer, morning field work or midnight policy drafting?
Yeah, morning tea, but yeah.
So where does your soul belong? Mountains, deserts, or oceans?
Mountain. I love mountains. Yeah.
But right now, mountains are not calling. You know?
Yes. Mountains are calling.
Yeah. Okay, so first thing you had to do is make climate minister for a day.
Well, I would like to work like our current CM, Mariam Nawaz Sharif Saiba and Madam Aurangzeb as a climate minister of provincial corporate is working. They are doing amazing job. I would like to practice all those things which are going for the betterment of climate.
Okay, so describe your job for a 5-year-old.
I will tell them that I'm just, I can't describe it in words, basically. It's difficult to describe.
Yeah, people think this is a very easy question, but it's not. So, what do you do
Yeah,
to
it's
see
not.
it?
It's not. It's just I have to recall many things. So I couldn't say anything about it exactly.
Yeah, you're doing very tough job. So, okay, so yeah, that's all from our side. So, okay, so that's a very brilliant. I'm very, very pleased to talk with you. It's very informative and it's fun too. So, thank you so much for your time, for sharing very insightful insights, your experience, your different experience from different countries, different organizations, and for everything you do for advanced climate and environmental justice on the ground and on the policy levels. And once again, thank you so much, ma'am. So, yeah,
Thank you very much. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Thanks.
thank you. So that's all from this episode. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next episode of AIJ Navigators.